Hi guys, in today's video I am going to show you how I made this Batman Lego cake. So this is for my partner Richard. He's a big Lego fanatic. He also isn't actually that keen on cake. So I've dug out some of Richard's Lego collection. He's got quite a few of the minifigures. I'm thinking to pick one with an easy shape to do. Like the guy in the boat's pretty cool. Batman I think might be one Richard would prefer. The guy in the bath is pretty cool and the guy in the boat, but also the hot dog. I need an easy shape to make, so let's go for Batman. I think he's more simple shape-wise, although I think maybe the helmet might be tricky. So I'm gonna need an internal structure. I'm gonna need a board under his head, his body, and his feet, and then we're gonna add metal threaded rods to kind of hold it all together, and we will stack our cake around this area. So it should look something like this. First of all, I need to make this food safe. So I'm gonna add some straws, also some aluminium foil. You just wanna make sure that your food or your cake's not coming into contact with the internal structure. I'm gonna use Rice Krispie treats for the legs because Richard enjoys Rice Krispie treats more than he does cake. So why not include these? Also, it makes my life a little bit easier too. I used ready bought ones, but actually I think it probably would have been much quicker for me to just create my own Rice Krispie treats, because all it is marshmallows and Rice Krispies mixed together. Just double checking all the time that I'm getting the shapes right, cutting these out as I go along. It cuts quite nicely, actually does the marshmallow treats, which is good as well. Slightly less crumbly than me using cake. So I'm gonna cover this in ganache. I'll cover it in ganache before I add the second leg actually. I just wanna get a nice smooth surface on these Rice Krispie treats so that it's easier to cover in fondant shortly. Straight edges are not something I'm particularly good with, so that's the bit I'm not looking forward to. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to doing some cake as well. I'm gonna cut some pieces so that they match with the size of his body, and I'm gonna layer them up. I also need some buttercream for in between the layers. I'm just gonna keep it simple with nice vanilla buttercream for this one. So I'll put it on the cake board, so this will be the body. Thought the knife was very appropriate for Batman themed. So I'm gonna layer up these cakes. I have put a little cut in each one so that I can slide it around that metal pole. I'm now thinking I should have done a Harry Potter Lego figure instead. Never mind. Right, I am gonna go pretty much to that cake board. I maybe should have gone not quite as far because I'm looking at my template. I didn't really allow for a neck on this one, but I am gonna just trim. So I just drew an outline of a Lego figure, a pretty basic Lego figure, so I could use that for the template. Okay, let's add the other leg. I did mean to do this earlier. I got a bit excited and went straight onto the cake bit. I'm also gonna cover the whole thing now in chocolate ganache. I do still need to add the head, but I'll add the ganache at this point just because the cake's pretty soft and I want to make sure it stays there in place. And I do now want to go over it and smooth it as much as I can. So I'm using a metal scraper. You can use plastic ones for this. The metal one I can heat up a little bit, which kind of melts the ganache a tiny bit for me, which can help me get it smooth. This is the one I really wanted to do, the hot dog one. Which Lego figure would you guys have chosen if you could do any Lego figure as a cake? So it's really important that I get these edges on the legs straight. And then I realized I missed a little bit here that should be a slightly different shape, so I'll just mark that in. You see just that bit under his tummy, almost the belt area, so I'm gonna have to change the shape of that a little bit. And it means I'm gonna change the shape of the top of the legs a tiny bit too. It's not a complicated shape, but it is quite important that we do get the shape right on this one. And I'll just re-ganache that and smooth back over. You can spend quite a lot of time on ganaching, guys, but it is the important bit. It is really important to get nice and smooth underneath. I never used to think that, but it definitely helps me more now. Okay, so the head, I'm gonna use some small little 4-inch cakes for this. I wish I'd left the threaded rod sticking up a little bit more out the top of this board here so that I could attach the head without falling off. So I'm gonna just put on a little plastic hollow dowel just to help hold this in place. And then I'm gonna start threading those round cakes onto there. Again, I do have a template for this, guys, to help me stack it to the right size. Now the 4-inch cakes were perfect for if I'd have done a Lego figure that wasn't wearing a Batman helmet. And I didn't think about this when I was adding this on because of course the template I drew was just the shape of a bog standard Lego figure. So at this stage, yeah, that's fine, but I should have maybe turned him into a different style Lego figure than Batman. Then I realized afterwards that obviously his head wasn't wide enough for the helmet that Batman wears, and that's too much for me to bulk out in ganache. So what I did was I took some more Rice Krispie squares, I flattened them a little bit, and then I actually printed off his head with the Batman helmet so that I could use this as a template this time and hopefully get that right. I'm gonna mark on where the facial features go, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use those Rice Krispie treats that I flattened. I'm gonna stick a bit of ganache on them, and I am gonna bulk out the head and try and create his helmet with the Rice Krispie treats. I figured this has to be a little bit nicer tasting than if I just put thicker ganache or even really thick fondant on. Also, just adding thick fondant, not only like people just pull it off and not eat it, but it would have added a lot of extra weight on the head. So this way it's keeping the weight down a tiny bit and bulking it out for me too. So I try and cut it into different little shapes that I can press around the helmet to try and get it sort of the right angles and the right shape for his helmet. We're gonna need those two pointy bits as well on the top in a bit. Gonna just mark through the template on here and cut the eyes out of here like so. Okay, didn't end up quite the same shape as what I cut out when I put it on. And a lot of it is kind of trial and error with these kind of things. You do something and then you realize that actually you could have done it a different way. And now for those pointy bits, the all important bits. I'm gonna use plenty of ganache to stick those on in place. It's starting to look a bit more like Batman now. And if you ever wonder why there's loads of books in the background of my videos, I use the books for standing my cameras on to get the cameras to different heights. It's not that I just do lots of reading. They are literally what I prop my cameras up on when I'm working. So once the helmet is on, I am going to cover the whole thing in chocolate ganache. Just like we did with the body. Excuse the dog in the background. Our kitchen goes straight through to our living room, so you can usually see the dog. Still thinking, should I do the ballerina Batman? Because at this stage I haven't put any kind of colour on him, and I could turn him into any of those Batman figures, I guess. But I'm gonna use like a really pale coloured fondant. It's kind of a really pale peach. So doing like the back of his neck and the mouth area. And I'm gonna try and shade it with a little bit of edible dust. So it's a bit darker around the edges and then lighter in the middle. I'm not sure how well that does show on camera for you guys. Then I'm gonna roll out some thin fondant, as thin as I can get it, and I'm drawing on the mouth. I've just used an edible pen for this, guys, and I've stuck it on in place with some water to try and add some more shading for lines around the edge of his mouth. Again, I'm just looking at the little figure I have here for all the detailing. And I have actually changed the colour from the little Lego figure. I was gonna do like the grey and blue one because I figured that's, you know, the more old style Batman. But that Lego figure has wings that stick out quite a lot at the side, so I decided that I would go with the black version. I don't know what version you call all these, but yeah, the one that's black and yellow. That's the one we're going for. So I'm gonna cover the helmet. This was quite tricky because I needed to make sure I didn't press it down too much in the eye and the mouth area so that I could then cut out these areas easily without it sticking. I didn't do the neatest job here. And actually when I tried to neaten it up, I think I made it even messier. And then it's just a case of cutting around those little, I'm gonna call them ears. Are they ears? I don't know what they are on Batman's helmet. Just rubbing it down with my fingers. I have washed my hands, guys. And then trying to smooth out any seams. And I'll link below the video anything that I've used in this video to try and help you if you want to make a version of this yourself. So only pressing gently around the eye area. We don't need to cut out the eyes actually because I can just paint them in. I'm sort of pinching the fondant together between my fingers to create sort of ridges on his helmet. And I'm actually just gonna draw in where I want the white of his eye to go. And let's roll some white really, really thin. Now I'm just using fondant. If you find fondant's a bit soft, you could swap for modeling paste for these little white areas. And I haven't even cut it quite to the right shape before putting it in. I'm gonna stick it in and then I'm gonna try cut it when it's in there. I wish actually that I'd given the fondant a bit of time to firm up and cut it to the exact shape before I'd put it in the eye, but I thought, try this way, see how it works. But I think if I was making another one, I would probably cut it out fully and then stick it in. Okay, now getting between these legs is gonna be tricky, so I'll put this middle section in here. And then I'm gonna try and get the fondant as thin as I can on this. I could have maybe even gone a little bit thinner. And we're gonna slide it between the legs. I figured this is gonna be the most difficult part, so I'll do that first. And then I carefully cut down all those edges. It's funny when I roll out the fondant, I think it feels like I've rolled it really thin, and it's only when I cut it like this that I see that it's not as thin as I think I've rolled it. Obviously, the thinner you roll it, the more you will see any unsmooth bits of the ganache underneath. I'm just marking where it's gonna come to, and then we'll trim that off again at the edges. Oh, if you cut it too short, just carefully stretch it gently with your fingers, just by rubbing it. Now you will see a little bit of a seam just there, so just try and rub that out a little bit with this tool. I think it's called the cat tongue tool, this one. Now, my fondant is a bit thicker on the sides of the body, and that's because I realized that despite using the template, his body wasn't quite wide enough at the bottom, so I've just thickened up my fondant. Can you see more at the bottom than at the top, just to try and change the shape of the body a little bit. But the front and the back can still go on really thin. In fact, I don't need one on the back yet. We'll do that when we do the cape. Just smoothing it off as I go along. So I'm going to roll out some yellow for the belt and also the logo that goes on his front too. I'll roll it nice and thin for the logo. Now I do have an oval cutter somewhere, I'm just never sure where I've put it, so I thought I'd try doing it with a circle. It didn't quite work, so I'm just going to cut around that template that I've printed out. I'm using little circle cutters to try and help me get the shapes as well. I find it quite tricky to bend and maneuver the craft knife around sharp bends. Okay, so let's get a strip on for the belt. I'm just letting that logo firm up before I add it on. Well, not completely firm, but just firm enough that it doesn't stretch when I pick it up and put it on. And then I'm going to use a white edible pen to just draw the markings on for like all his muscles. Now you don't have to use an edible pen. You can just use like white food coloring. You could use like a gel color that you paint on, or you could use the white edible powders. They're mixed with like a clear alcohol or dipping solution. I think you can even mix them with lemon essence as well, or lemon juice. So just put a couple of little bits of this on his helmet as well. So it looks like the light is catching on those areas. He's starting to come together much more now, I think. Okay, so let's add some extra bits onto the belt. So we're going to cut out like some rectangles and squares for, is it his utility belt? Is that what you call it, a utility belt? It's funny how I'm not very good at cutting squares and rectangles. You'd think it'd be super easy, or maybe it is for everyone else, but straight lines are not a good thing for me at all. Okay, so more Rice Krispie treats. This time I did make my own because I realized I had run out of the ones I bought. And this is going to be for the arms. If I make them out of just solid icing, they're going to be way too heavy. So let's make them out of Rice Krispie treats. They're also going to be slightly nicer to eat this way as well. Okay, so they're only small and they've got a little bending like that. I'm swapping to modeling paste now for some of these details. Let's make the hands ready. Now I'm going to curve them around the handle so we try and get that shape. I've managed to get a bit of white icing stuck in there as well. While those hands are firming up a little bit, let's cover the arms in a layer of black fondant. Now I've gone a bit thicker with this simply because I haven't ganached the Rice Krispie treats, and you will see all the lumps and bumps if I don't go fairly thick. I am going to add some wooden cocktail sticks to just help hold it in because the weight of them on their own is probably going to be a bit too heavy. I've also got some piping gel on there to help stick it as well, and then we're going to put some little cylinders on the ends of the arms, and then we're going to push this hand on. So the hand, I'm not only sticking to the wrist, but I'm also going to press it against the body, and you'll need to hold it there for a little while, or if you want you can push a cocktail stick in, but once it's firmed up I am going to remove those cocktail sticks out of the hand because I don't want them staying in there like that, and I don't want to push them too far in because you might not find those ones to get them back out again. More modeling paste, this time for the cape. I want to roll this pretty thin. I did have to make this twice because the first one I did, I rolled it nice and thin, it looked great, and then it tore as I was putting it on. So I'm slightly thicker with this one, still fairly thin. And let's see if I can get this one on. So again, I'm using some piping gel to press it in place. Now because it is modeling paste, it does firm up as I'm going along, which means I need to work quite quickly with it. Although the bonus of it is that I can get it to kind of stick out a little bit at the edges like this. My fondant would probably flop a bit too much for the cape if I was using fondant for it. So let's try and tuck it in under the neck and then trim that off. I'm gonna have to do a bit of tidying here. It kind of tore in some parts, look. So removing those sticks before I forget, let's add a few hours to rest. And there he is, all finished. Let's see what Richard thinks. I'm only a day late for his birthday. I had to do some, I planned on doing it in time. Happy birthday, Richard. Happy birthday. I planned on doing, the camera's a bit low down for Richard. Here you go, happy birthday.
Thank you. He looks amazing. I will cut the cake if you let me cut the cake. Am I allowed to cut him? Yeah, you have to cut him. You also have to eat him as well. I'm tempted to take a chunk out of this. No, just cut him. Okay. Just cut him normally.
I do wish though that I had spent longer tidying up around his neck area. When I was making it, from my angle, you didn't really see that. And when I filmed him at the end like this, I realized you can actually just see those messy bits there. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you for the next video very soon.
Follow my aunties on YouTube.